Hello, Happy New Year, and welcome to album review number 22. Today I'm going to be reviewing Metropolis Part 2 by Dream Theater. This was a concept album and it was released in 1999. I only own about 4 or 5 Dream Theater albums, and I don't think I'll be getting any more. I've talked in my previous videos, I'm not a big fan of Dream Theater, and I've actually only listened to this album a few times, and I just finished listening to it again there about 5 minutes ago. Just to refresh, just to get it into my head, sort of refresh it in my brain. So let's get straight into it. The album starts with regression. It's put into scenes like Act 1, Act 2, sort of to make it like a play or a movie. I don't think that's particularly necessary. I don't think it really adds anything. I think they're just sort of trying to. I guess you could call it pretentious. They're just being pretentious there. I just, I'm not a fan of that. Regression's okay. It starts off. You know you're listening to a concept album when you get something like that. This sort of spoken word thing. You know it's going to last the whole album. But it sounds like Nobody's Home by Roger Waters. It does. I mean, sorry, Pink Floyd. Well, it was written by Roger Waters, so yeah, Roger Waters. It seriously sounds almost the exact same. I've got something to do on my shoes on. So I can't really remember all the lyrics, but the do 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 do, that thing sounds exactly like it. And so right from the start, it's a bad start when the first track is immediately going. That sounds exactly like another song. Then we get the overture. Can't have a long concept album without an overture, I guess. And it has reprises from part 1, which was on the Images and Words album. It's a 10-minute, nearly 10-minute track, Metropolis Part 1. And this track here, Overture, has reprises from that song. I guess if Rush did it with Cygnus, I guess they might as well do it. It's decent enough, the overture. Don't really have much to say about it, but it's not bad, I suppose. It's track 3. I'm not going to be saying scene 1, scene 2, or scene 3. There's 12 tracks, and I'm just going to be saying it that way. Strange Deja Vu, I'd say, is one of the better songs on the album. Part of it sounds a bit like the Red Hot Chili Peppers' One Hot Minute album. If you listen to Warped, it kind of sounds like that. If you've listened to that album, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. So again, they're kind of, when I listen to Dream Theater, I'm constantly reminded of other bands, and I don't like that, especially if I'm listening to a band that's supposed to be progressive. But I would say it's one of the better songs on the album. Through My Words is basically a sort of short, basic piano tune. It's nothing memorable. There's no really beautiful moments in it. It's a really short track. There's nothing really beautiful or memorable in it. It's just sort of your basic, sort of slow, kind of sad piano tune, I suppose. Track 5 is Fatal Tragedy, and it's sung sort of in 2 parts. The first half, I suppose, is okay, but the second half, I'd say, which is mainly instrumental, is awful. One thing you'll notice about Dream Theater if you listen to them, and is John Petrucci and his guitar style. I am not a fan of it. He falls into the category of guitarists who seem to think that the more and the faster they strum and the more notes they can play, the more they go up and down the fretboard, the better. I was talking to one of my ex-girlfriends. We were talking once, and we were asking each other what our favourite guitar solo was. She picked an Avenged Sevenfold song, and I wasn't a big fan of the guitar solo because it's just really, really fast. It's just that kind of thing. And I said, the faster the guitar solo, the better. And she said, well, actually, yeah, that is true. The faster, the better. I went, no, you're totally wrong. My personal favourite guitar solo is, La Via Strangiato by Rush. I love the sort of slow kind of part near the middle. I love how slowly it starts. You get these long notes, sort of atmospheric, and then it slowly builds up, and then it goes. I know he's going fast at that one bit. I don't mind a bit of that. I don't mind a bit of like that when it works. I don't mind it when it's used sparingly. I just don't like it when it's used all the time. And I just think that's such an amazing guitar solo. It goes through so many different atmospheres and emotions and vibes. But John Petrucci just overdoes it with the sort of stuff. You'll hear it on every Dream Theater album, and it gets tiresome. It gets very tiresome. And I'd say the keyboard solo is just as bad, and it's a very predictable track. You sort of notice that Dream Theater are pretty formulaic. Track 6 is Beyond This Life. I'd say the lyrics are awful. The lyrics are a headline, basically. They're reading from what would be a newspaper, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't. I guess it's unique in that way, but the lyrics are like literally a newspaper headline, and it just doesn't work. It sounds silly. It sounds a bit forced. Silly is the word I'd use to describe it. It doesn't sound natural. It just sounds a bit silly. And the 5/8, the sort of grungy 5/8 riff, the gets boring very quickly, especially for a song that goes on for so long. It's way too long. It's like 11 minutes. And again, I don't have a problem with 11-minute songs when they should be that long. I don't have a problem with an 80-minute song if it actually should be 80 minutes. I'm not referring to The Whirlwind by Transatlantic, because that's not an 80-minute song. It's 12 tracks split into it's 12 songs. The band called it a 78-minute song, but it's split into 12 tracks, and it is 12 songs. I don't care. I don't really care what Transatlantic say. It's 12 songs, right? They just wanted to say that they wrote a 78-minute song when they didn't. But I'd say you get a lot of what Dream Theater do a lot here. And a big noticeable problem I have with them is either they'll have a riff or a rhythm that would have been perfectly fine if it was in 4/4 or 3/4 or something like that, but they take off a half beat just to make it complex, even though it doesn't sound quite right. It's jarring, and I think the thing about complex time signatures is you need to do it when it works. You can't just, if you've got a piece of music that sounds perfectly good in 4/4, taking off a half beat to make it 7/8, and even though it sounds worse, is a terrible idea. And I write some tunes every now and then, and I was actually falling into that trap once as well. Any tune I came up with in 4/4 or a simple time signature, I was adding on a half beat or taking off a half beat just to make it complex. And I caught myself. I realised it was wrong, because I was just making it sound worse. Complex time signatures, of course, are there to be used, but only if it actually sounds good, and only if it actually works. I have absolutely no problem with 15/16 or whatever flung in with a song, but only if it actually works. And if you're just going, oh, let's just take off a half beat just to make it complex, then I have a big problem with that. But it just kind of goes to show Dream Theater's music is just what you get with this song. The music is just so formulaic and predictable. You don't hear anything in Dream Theater that you aren't really expecting once you've listened to a few of their songs. And it just goes on and on, to be honest, that song. Track 7, Through Our Eyes. Again, I have another problem. It sounds a bit too much like one of the slower songs on Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, sort of near the end of the album. I couldn't think of which track. I'd say Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking is actually my personal least favourite Roger Waters solo album, but it sounds like one of them. And again, you just notice that Dream Theater are a band that wear their inspirations on their sleeves. They're basically going, yeah, we spent our like teenage years listening to Yes and Rush and Pink Floyd. Can you tell? While you listen to a band like Tool, yeah, there's some King Crimson in there. There's some of that, but they totally have their own style as well. Home, I'd say, it starts off pretty good. It has a very interesting opening, sort of sort of Indian style. You got some sort of sitar sort of stuff going on in there, but again, it sounds like a Tool song. You listen to the opening, the first couple of minutes of Home by Dream Theater, and tell me it doesn't sound like 46 and 2 by Tool. I can even tell you exactly which Tool song. It sounds like 46 and 2. It's almost the same. It's almost the exact same. And the fact that I love Tool so much, I can't help but sort of like that. Again, it's my problem with Dream Theater when I think they're almost 90%, pretty much 90% of the time, they're only good when they're copying other bands because they're not very good at writing decent tunes themselves. But yeah, it almost sounds exactly like 46 and 2, but then it kicks in. You get a decent heavy riff, but the song goes on for too long. Way too long. It doesn't need to be that long at all. I mean, how long is it? It's nearly 13 minutes. It does not need to be that long. Then, oh boy, track 9, Dance of Eternity. Oh my god, this song. It is awful. Dance of Eternity. Absolutely atrocious. I'm sorry, I know a lot of people love it. It's like the most complex piece of music ever. It has like 126 time signature changes or something. I don't care. It is absolutely abysmal, this track. It's the worst track on the album. It's an instrumental. I'm not a fan of James LeBree's voice, but throughout this song, you know, I wanted some of that formulaic Dream Theater that we've heard a million times when James LeBree's singing. Because Dance of Eternity, it has some. You'll notice that when you listen to it, it has some slightly interesting parts. You'll get a riff or a wee bit that actually sounds pretty good, and you're like, oh, that's not bad. And then 3 seconds later, it changes because God forbid the song sits still for more than 2 seconds. It's like the song actually has ADHD. It's like you're listening to a song that, you know, it's constantly going like that, easily distracted, constantly changing all the time when it doesn't need to. And that's my biggest problem with it. It is so obvious that they just wanted to write a song that has 126 time signatures, not because it actually works. None of it sounds good. Like, again, you have a couple of decent riffs hidden throughout the song. A couple of sort of near the beginning, you'll hear a wee bit that's not bad. But again, it lasts about 2 bars and then it changes to something else that sounds nowhere near as good. So it's like, what's the point? Like, you know, I thought maybe extend the song. Actually, I know that sounds weird. I'm saying that it's only 6.5 minutes. It's not a long song, but I would actually say extend it. Make it 12.5 minutes or so. Make double the length of the track, and give some of the riffs a bit of time to grow and actually explore them for a few seconds. You know, maybe 20 seconds at least on a riff. Do something interesting with it instead of just doing something for a few seconds, then changing it, then doing that for a few seconds and changing it. It just sounds so bad, and I hate it. I hate the Dance of Eternity. It just sums up to me everything that's wrong with modern prog. You know, being complex when they don't need to. Just hammering in all these negative stereotypes about prog. You know, it's more about being complex and fitting in as many time signatures as possible and actually writing a good tune. I've heard people say that to me, and I totally disagree with it. But then if they were to say, well, what about Dance of Eternity? I need to say, well, you're right about that song. You know, it's an assault on the senses, and not in a good way. It's not like, you know, but bands like Van der Graaf Generator are an assault on the senses, but it's good. It works. It sounds terrific. This is an assault on the senses that genuinely gives me a headache. I'm not kidding. This song genuinely puts me through physical pain. I'm not kidding. It's the worst track on the album. Like, you know, when people say, "Oh, that gives me a headache," when they're actually not being serious, it actually gives me a headache. Dance of Eternity. I was listening to it there. My head was sore. Seriously. And that piano solo, you know, they do that part. That's pretty bad as well. And I've heard people on the YouTube video saying it's the greatest piano solo of all time. Take a Pebble, Keith Emerson, Supper's Ready, Tony Banks, pretty much any of the older ones. Close to the Edge, Rick Wakeman, really greatest keyboard solo of all time. When you've got ones like that to choose from, seriously, bro. Right, number 10 is One Last Time. Decent, and it's a decent enough basic tune. It's quite a short song, but it's a nice song, and it's actually one of the better ones. But this is when the lyrics are starting to annoy me. It's like I can't just enjoy a song because there's always something that's annoying me about it. The lyrics annoy me in this one because I'm starting to realise I couldn't care less about the concept. I don't care about the tragedy, and I still think it goes on and on about this tragedy. Count how many times the word tragedy or tragic is used throughout the album. It's well over a dozen, and it just gets annoying. I don't care about the concept of this album, you know, and I don't even fully understand it, and I don't care enough to understand it. The lyrics, the thing about a good concept album is you listen to the lyrics, and even if you don't understand the concept, you think, "Oh, I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna think about it." I don't care. I just don't care. You know, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway might be a bit overly convoluted and a bit weird. The story, you know, I remember I sat and explained the entire story to my friend once. It took about a good 10 minutes, and he just looked at me like that the whole time. But it's interesting. It's fun, you know. But this just isn't. Track 11, The Spirit Carries On. Again, we get Nobody's Home again. It's a reprise of the first track, Regression. He even tries to sound like Roger Waters, James LaBrie. You know, when Roger Waters, songs like, you know, the really quiet ones, when Roger Waters, you almost feel like he's whispering in your ear, that sort of thing. He even tries to sound like Roger Waters in this song. And I just really don't like it. And I'd say, though, I'll give John Petrucci some credit here. It's the only song on the album that he actually has a decent guitar solo, but it sounds too much like David Gilmour. It almost sounds like the song almost sounds like a Pink Floyd song, and then you get the female backing vocals going ooh ah, sort of like that throughout it, and that annoys me because it's telling the listener that the song is more epic than it actually is. Then track 12, finally Free, which is, you know, finally we get to the end. I feel like they're taking a piss at this point because the album's 70 minutes long and it doesn't need to be that long. It's, you know, 55 tops. And I feel like they're taking the piss at this point because it's 12 minutes, you know, because of course it is. God forbid they end with a short song. The album's already gone on for too long, and it's just more of the same. More of the stuff we've heard throughout the album, more of the stuff we've heard from Dream Theater. There's nothing in the final track that you haven't heard before. And it sort of rounds off the album with the sort of noises and sounds and people talking and stuff like that. But again, I'm not interested. What pisses me off the most about this album is that it was voted the greatest prog rock album of all time by readers of Rolling Stone magazine. Seriously? You know, Lark's Tongue's an Aspic, Close to the Edge, Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Moving Pictures, Selling England by the Pound. None of these albums crossed your mind? Really? Guys? Greatest prog album ever? Seriously? Are you fucking kidding me? It's not even the best Dream Theater album. In fact, I'd say it's the worst that I've listened to. I've listened to Octavarium, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, and Images and Words. Oh, I've also listened to Change of Seasons. And I'd say Metropolis Part 2 is actually the worst out of all of them. Images and Words has Pull Me Under, which is a good song. It's simple, but it's good. It's some great riffs in that. And it's got Metropolis Part 1, which I think if I listened to Metropolis Part 1 for the first time now, I wouldn't like it. But when I first listened to it over 2 years ago, it was the first Dream Theater album I bought, Images and Words. I was actually originally going to buy Metropolis Part 2 first because it's their highest rated album. It's ranked as their best album amongst Dream Theater fans. But I listened to Images and Words first because I couldn't find a cheap copy on Amazon of Metropolis Part 2 for some reason. But then I did a couple of months later. But anyway, I bought Images and Words because that's ranked as their second best album. And I enjoyed it. It's good. And I hadn't heard anything like that at that time. At that time, I was still getting into modern prog. I was a classicist for such a long time. I was getting into bands like Transatlantic, the Flower Kings, and I listened to it, and I thought Metropolis Part 1, I loved how complex it was. I even the bit that goes, the sort of stop start bit, I didn't even mind that. It's just because I hadn't heard anything like that before, so I thought it was interesting. But now, after listening to a good few Dream Theater's albums and realising that all their stuff sounds like that, and that complex stuff is just, they overdo that all the time. It's not fun, and it's not good to listen to. And I'll give you an example of an actually good Dream Theater song. Listen to Blind Faith from 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. It's a good, I think it's a good 13 minutes long. It's a long song, but it's really good. It's a song that has some beautiful bass lines. It's got lovely atmospherics, that stuff. That's really nice. And it's not overly complex. You can tell the band actually cared about writing a really good piece of music than filling Facebook messages, filling the song with as many time signatures as possible. And that's exactly what they did on songs like Dance of Eternity. I don't know if I've already mentioned Mr. Sands by Van de Graaff Generator. That is a song that has almost as many time signatures, 90 something, and every single time signature is exactly where they should be. The Van de Graaff Generator is an example of a band that every note and every chord and every time signature change, every minute, every 12-minute song they do is exactly as long as it needs to be. And Dream Theater, to me, just sum up everything that's wrong in modern prog, and this album especially. I'm not a Dream Theater fan, so I'm sorry if I offended anybody. I just really don't like this album. It's a bad album. I'm sorry, but it is. It's just bad. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Anyway, thanks for watching. This was my first negative review. 22 reviews, and this was my first negative one. I might have been a bit harsh at times. They're good musicians, Dream Theater. John Petrucci is a good guitar player. Mike Portnoy is a great drummer. Jonathan Rudess is a good keyboard player. I can't remember the bassist's name, sorry, but he's good as well. James LaBrie's a decent vocalist, I suppose. But I think if they actually sat down and tried to write a nice tune, than just trying to become overly complex and how much noise they can fill in to the song as much as possible, then I'd prefer it. But as is, I'm not a fan of Dream Theater. I don't find them that progressive either. If you were listening to one of their newer songs, what's that? The Astonishing, I think is their most recent album. Although I think they're releasing a new album this year. If you listen to a song from that and then listen to a song from Images and Words, they haven't changed that much in almost 30 years. And that's to me what progressive music should be. It should be constantly changing. Every prog band should be evolving. Again, listen to any other prog band, how much they've changed over 30 years, like Rush. See how much they've changed over the space of 30 years. Listen to a song from, I don't know, 74, and then listen to a song from 2002. There's a big change there. Or, as a better example, listen to Xanadu from Farewell to Kings, then listen to a song from Snakes and Arrows. That's a 30-year difference, and you see how much they've changed. But Dream Theater just haven't changed that much, and Tool and Dream Theater are often considered like the two biggest prog metal bands. I'd give it to Tool any day. They're far more experimental, more unique, more progressive, far more interesting, more emotional. There's more emotional depth in their music. The riffs are more interesting. Again, I think Dream Theater maybe should have just been a cover band. They're decent instrumentalists, they're decent musicians, but they're just not great songwriters. So anyway, that was my review of Metropolis Part 2 by Dream Theater. Thanks for watching. I really hope I didn't offend too many people.